On the screen, we have Bobby Jindal. The governor of Louisiana meets today at a fundraiser in Baton Rouge with Republican presidential contender Mitt Romney. The rendezvous obviously comes as there is heightened interest in who will be Mitt Romney's vice presidential pick. With more details in Baton Rouge, we have Sarah Murray. Sarah, is Bobby Jindal a contender for VP?
You know, I think he's absolutely a contender, but I would say he's definitely not one of the top 1, 2, or even 3 on the list. You know, but he is sort of beloved by conservatives, and he does have a great narrative to tell, you know, just in terms of the American dream. And that's something that Mitt Romney really lacks, is this like great American story about, you know, coming to the U.S. and just sort of building a success story out of essentially nothing.
And do they want that American success story, or Republicans like that American success story, in part to go up against President Barack Obama's own kind of American dream story?
Yeah, I think it helps to go up against Barack Obama's narrative, but it also sort of helps them with this relatability issue we've been talking about with Mitt Romney since, you know, it feels like forever. Bobby Jindal's the kind of guy who has a really in-depth policy experience, but is also just as comfortable, you know, on the Gulf during the oil spill, chatting up fishermen. And I think that his personal narrative kind of builds into that.
And what do you think that Republicans are looking for in a vice presidential candidate? Are they looking for someone to kind of shore up support among independents, so people who might be on the fence, or looking to really bring home and secure the votes of kind of diehard conservative Republicans?
You know, I think that the calculation among a lot of conservatives is that diehard Republicans don't like the president. They're not going to vote for the president no matter what, even if they're not particularly in love with Mitt Romney. And so that's not really the worry here. You know, the worry is kind of bringing in, like you said, these independent voters, these swing voters, and getting them to their side.
And how much is the timing of this fundraiser in Baton Rouge, where you are, how much of it is a trial balloon, meaning the sense that the Romney campaign is trying to engage reaction today to his meeting with Governor Jindal?
You know, that's a really great question. I mean, the Romney campaign has been very tight-lipped about this kind of thing, and so we just don't really have a good sense of whether they're just trying it out or whether this was something, you know, that he just wants the check from Baton Rouge.
Right. And speaking of trial balloon, we obviously had potentially a trial balloon last week with some news reports about former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. Is that name? What are you hearing over the weekend? Is that name still being floated as a potential VP contender?
You know, I think a lot of people think it was a trial balloon. A lot of conservatives I've chatted with also think it was a good way to kind of steer the narrative away from some sticky questions that Mitt Romney was facing about Bain. I think, you know, the really hard thing about Condoleezza Rice, I said this last week, I'll say it next week, I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. She was a Bush administration official, and a very prominent one. And Mitt Romney is a guy who can't even say the name Bush in public. I mean, I think he said it like twice. So the idea that he would be running alongside of this person is just really hard for me to comprehend.
And what do you think? I mean, it seems like the Romney campaign, compared to past campaigns, has been really effective at keeping a very tight seal on these names. Do you think we're going to see that going forward? And obviously they've said, you know, that they're going to, between now and the Republican convention, they're going to release names. Do you think it's going to be right up to the last minute, right up to that Republican convention, when we're going to see any potential names or real names?
I mean, I'm not sure what the timing will be, if they'll really wait right up until then. But I do think that you can definitely expect them to be completely tight-lipped going into it. The thing about the Romney campaign is it's a very tight circle of people who are kind of in the inner sanctum, who control it. And at the head of this vice presidential process is a woman named Beth Myers, and she has been a longtime advisor to Governor Romney, and she's fiercely loyal. And that's true of a lot of the people he kind of has in his inner circle. And so, you know, they're very focused on the secrecy of this kind of thing, and they're very committed to it.
And walk us through just a couple of the other names. We mentioned Condoleezza Rice, but some of the other names who also keep, you know, continuing surfacing over these recent weeks.
Sure. You know, I think that people kind of look at the top of the list and they see Ohio Senator Rob Portman. They see former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty. I mean, you know, the biggest plus in a lot of these cases is these are guys who aren't going to hurt the ticket at all. They're not going to make a big ripple one way or the other. And Governor Romney is comfortable with both of them. He's regularly appeared on the stump with them. You know, Rob Portman is also from Ohio, which is an important swing state. And so that's a big factor here. The only person that the Romney campaign has said officially on the record we are vetting is Marco Rubio from Florida. And I think, you know, his credentials are kind of obvious. You know, he's got a great kind of a similarly great narrative as Bobby Jindal. He also hails from Florida, which is an important swing state. You know, they think he's the kind of guy who could potentially help them win over some Hispanics. And so he's got a lot of things to bring to the table as well.